All right, so today we're going to kind of dive into something I think we can all relate to a little too well.
Yeah,
Couples arguments.
for sure.
Why do they happen?
Oh, yeah.
What's the deeper meaning behind all those little spats? And how can we all kind of navigate them with a little more grace?
Yeah.
Our source material today is this article called 10 Most Common Reasons Why Couples Argue from 10 Most Today.
Okay.
And it's got the usual suspects, money, kids, relatives.
Right.
But some of these reasons might actually really surprise you.
Interesting.
So get ready.
Yeah.
We're about to decode those arguments and help you see them in a whole new light.
Yeah. It's fascinating how even those seemingly small disagreements, like who forgot to buy the milk or whatever, can actually reveal so much about the underlying dynamics of the relationship.
Right.
It's like a window into those unspoken expectations and, those power struggles that kind of simmer beneath the surface.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Spill the tea.
All right.
What are some of these less obvious triggers that this article highlights?
Well, right off the bat, it dives into a topic that I think a lot of couples kind of shy away from.
Okay.
Sex.
Oh.
You might not think of it as a common cause for arguments,
Right.
but differing desires and expectations around intimacy can definitely lead to tension and even resentment if they're not addressed openly.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like if one partner feels constantly rejected or pressured,
Right.
those feelings are bound to kind of spill over into other areas of the relationship.
Exactly.
It's not even just about sex itself, but about feeling desired and understood.
Exactly. Yeah. And this whole idea of unspoken expectations, it plays out in other surprising ways too.
Okay.
The article even cautions against criticizing your partner's cooking, even if you think they're doing it wrong.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
You mean I can't even tell my partner they put way too much salt in the pasta?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
It might seem like a silly thing to argue about on the surface, but what's really going on there?
Right.
These kitchen battles often represent deeper issues related to control, respect, and how much autonomy each person feels like they have in the relationship.
Oh. Okay. I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
So it's not really about the burnt casserole,
Right.
but about what that burnt casserole represents in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's about recognizing those seemingly trivial arguments as symptoms of something deeper.
Okay.
And speaking of things that can spark disagreement, let's talk about cleanliness.
Okay.
The article points out that differing standards of tidiness can be a major source of friction between couples.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely more of a live and let live type when it comes to clutter.
Yeah.
But I know some people who can't relax until everything's in its place.
Right. And those differences in tolerance for mess often stem from our personalities, our upbringing,
Right.
and even, how we prioritize our time and energy.
Yeah.
So finding a way to compromise and accept those differences is crucial rather than trying to force your partner to conform to your standards.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where both partners feel respected and comfortable, even if their definitions of clean don't perfectly align.
Right.
But get this. The article throws in a real curveball.
Okay.
It mentions false memory syndrome.
Huh. Interesting.
Apparently, our memories can't always be trusted,
Right.
and couples can get into these heated arguments about events that they remember completely differently.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our memories are far from perfect.
Yeah.
They're colored by our emotions, our biases,
Right.
even our desire to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
So when two people experience the same event, they might encode it and recall it in surprisingly different ways.
That's both fascinating and a little unsettling.
I mean,
If we can't even agree on what actually happened,
Right.
how do we ever move forward from that?
well, that's where empathy and active listening come in. It's about trying to understand your partner's perspective, even if it differs from your own.
Right.
Instead of getting bogged down in who's right or wrong, focus on understanding why they remember things the way they do.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
It takes the focus off winning the argument and puts it on understanding each other better.
exactly.
And I'm guessing parenting decisions are another hotbed for disagreements.
Absolutely. Parenting taps into our core values and beliefs about how children should be raised.
Right.
So when couples don't have a shared vision, it can create conflict and even undermine their authority in the eyes of their kids.
It's like that old saying, divide and conquer.
Right.
Kids are incredibly perceptive, and they'll definitely play up those discrepancies if they sense their parents aren't on the same page.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even if you and your partner disagree on certain parenting approaches, it's essential to present a united front and work towards finding common ground.
Right.
Speaking of disagreements, the article mentions this interesting concept of blame addiction.
Ooh, blame addiction.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen that play out in relationships.
Yeah.
Some people are so quick to point fingers while others tend to internalize blame and kind of shoulder all the responsibility themselves.
It's fascinating how these ingrained patterns can sabotage relationships.
Right.
It's not just about who's at fault, but how our tendency to blame either ourselves or others can hinder personal growth and create this like toxic cycle.
So becoming aware of our own blame style and how it impacts our interactions is crucial, right?
Absolutely. Recognizing these patterns is the first step towards breaking free and communicating more effectively.
Okay, so we've unpacked some of these like unexpected argument triggers.
Right.
But how do we actually put this knowledge into action?
Right.
Knowing the why is one thing, but how can we actually use it to improve our communication and avoid those relationship landmines?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
You know, awareness is a great first step, but it's only the beginning. We need to move from understanding to action.
Right, yeah.
Let's take those like seemingly superficial arguments we talked about, the ones about cooking cleanliness or even like who takes out the trash.
Right, because those are rarely really about the chore itself, are they?
Right, exactly.
There's always something else bubbling beneath the surface.
Think about it, like when your partner criticizes your cooking, it might feel like a personal attack.
Yeah.
Like they're saying you're incompetent or you don't care enough.
Right.
But before you launch into a counterattack about their laundry habits,
yeah,
pause and ask yourself, what's the real need here? What's my partner actually trying to communicate?
So it's like those little annoyances are actually coded messages.
Yeah.
And it's our job to crack the code.
I love that analogy. It's about recognizing the surface level argument as a symptom of a deeper issue.
Right.
Maybe they're feeling overwhelmed with responsibilities, or perhaps they feel like their contributions aren't appreciated.
Right.
Instead of snapping back, try saying something like, hey, I hear that you're frustrated with the way I handled this. Can you help me understand what's bothering you?
That feels so much more productive than just getting defensive and escalating the conflict.
Right.
It's about shifting from blame to curiosity, right?
Exactly. And that same approach applies to so many other arguments.
Yeah.
The cleanliness battle might be about differing expectations of shared responsibility.
Yeah.
Holiday stress could stem from anxieties about family dynamics and so on.
Right.
Once you understand the root of the conflict, you can address it in a way that actually strengthens the relationship.
Okay, this is all making a lot of sense. But I think a lot of us struggle with putting this into practice, especially in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Our defenses go up and we react impulsively instead of responding thoughtfully.
Right. That's where understanding your own blame style comes in. Remember that concept we discussed earlier?
Right.
If you tend to blame others, challenge yourself to look inward. What role did you play in the situation? What could you have done differently?
And on the flip side, if you're someone who always blames yourself, remember that relationships are a two-way street. It's rarely one person's fault entirely.
Right. Healthy relationships require accountability from both partners.
Yeah.
It's not about pointing fingers. It's about working together to understand the problem and find solutions.
This reminds me of that point about false memory syndrome. It's so easy to get caught up in our own version of events, convinced that we're right and our partner is wrong.
Yeah.
But remembering that our memories are fallible can help us approach these situations with more humility and understanding.
Absolutely. Instead of arguing about whose memory is more accurate, try saying something like, help me understand why you remember it that way.
Okay.
It shifts the conversation from a battle of truths to a shared exploration of different perspectives.
Okay. So far, we've focused on those everyday disagreements that can chip away at a relationship.
Right.
But what about those bigger, more emotionally charged issues like sex and money?
Yeah.
Those can feel almost impossible to talk about without things getting heated.
You're right. Those are sensitive topics that require a different level of care and vulnerability. But avoiding those conversations only leads to more resentment and distance in the long run.
So how do we even begin to tackle those sensitive issues in a way that feels safe and productive?
The key is to create a space for open and honest dialogue, free from blame and judgment. Choose a time when you're both relaxed and can truly focus on each other, and frame the conversation as a team effort focused on finding solutions that work for both of you.
I imagine that's easier said than done when you're feeling hurt or frustrated. What are some concrete things we can say to keep the conversation from spiraling out of control?
Instead of saying something like, you never want to have sex,
Right.
try expressing how you feel. You could say, I've been feeling a little disconnected from you lately. Can we talk about how to rekindle our intimacy? I really miss feeling close to you.
That feels so much less accusatory, and it opens the door for a more vulnerable and compassionate conversation.
Exactly. It's about focusing on your needs and feelings and inviting your partner to share theirs as well. And when it comes to money, it's about creating a system that feels fair and transparent for both partners. It's not about who earns more or less, but about creating a shared understanding of your financial goals, value, and priorities.
And being willing to compromise and adapt as those needs and circumstances change over time, right?
Absolutely. Life throws us curveballs.
Yeah.
And our ability to adapt and navigate those financial challenges together is a true testament to the strength of our relationship. Because let's face it, relationships are constantly evolving, and so are the challenges we face together.
That actually ties in perfectly with something you said earlier, that arguments are inevitable because relationships are always changing and growing.
Right.
That's pretty profound when you think about it.
It is. And if we can learn to view disagreements not as threats to the relationship, but as opportunities for growth and deeper understanding, we can build stronger, more resilient bonds.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether, but about learning to navigate it in a way that brings us closer together.
That's the goal. And remember, you're not alone in this.
Right.
Every couple faces their own unique set of challenges, but we all share this common human experience of wanting to feel loved, understood, and supported in our relationships.
Yeah, it really is comforting to know that we're not alone in these struggles. You know, every couple has their own dynamic.
Absolutely.
But we're all navigating these similar challenges
Yeah.
when it comes to communication and conflict.
Absolutely. And, you know, the more we talk about these things openly and honestly, the less daunting they become.
Right.
It's like shining a light on those shadowy corners of our relationships and realizing they're not as scary as we might have imagined.
Okay, so we've talked about those unexpected argument triggers.
Right.
Explored the deeper meanings behind those conflicts.
Yeah.
And even learned some strategies for communicating more effectively.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up our deep dive today,
Yeah.
what's the biggest takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that arguments, when handled constructively, can actually be opportunities for growth and deeper understanding.
So it's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
Not at all.
Some of us might be breathing a sigh of relief there.
Right. Conflict is a natural part of any close relationship.
Yeah.
It's how we choose to engage with it that makes all the difference.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of viewing disagreements as threats,
Right.
we can see them as chances to learn more about ourselves,
Right.
our partners, and what we truly need from each other.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of our own patterns and triggers, we can start to break free from those destructive cycles of blame and resentment.
It's like we're giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to grow together through those challenges.
I love that it's about embracing the messy, imperfect beauty of real relationships.
And remembering that even those seemingly insignificant arguments, those squabbles about cooking, cleaning, or whose turn it is to walk the dog, can actually teach us so much about the dynamics at play in our relationships.
It's all valuable information. Those little moments of friction give us clues about where we need to adjust, communicate more clearly, and find that balance between our individual needs and the needs of the relationship.
So those everyday disagreements are like little breadcrumbs, leading us towards a deeper understanding of ourselves and our partners.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, that's a fantastic takeaway. As we close out our deep dive on couples arguments, what's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
I would encourage everyone listening to reflect on their own communication patterns. How do you typically approach conflict? Do you tend to shut down, get defensive, or maybe even lash out? And how does your partner respond? Becoming more mindful of those automatic reactions can make a world of difference.
It's about hitting that pause button before we react and choosing a more thoughtful and compassionate response.
Exactly. We can always choose to respond with empathy, understanding, and a genuine desire to connect even when it's challenging.
And hey, let's not forget the importance of humor.
Oh, absolutely.
Relationships can be messy and complicated, but they can also be downright hilarious.
Absolutely. Don't forget to laugh together along the way.
Well said. A huge thank you to our expert for sharing such incredible insights with us today. And to all of you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on couples arguments and inspired you to approach conflict in a more constructive and compassionate way. Remember, even disagreements when handled with care can be opportunities for growth, deeper connection, and a more fulfilling relationship. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those conversations flowing.